G'day to all, it's 6:30 sharp as I'm set like a Swiss clock. I'm ready to start for today and I have quite a few things to share with you. I will just wait a bit until some others may have joined before I really start. So let's see who may join for tonight. My impression is that there will not be too many people tonight. How come? I think one reason is that one of our most recurrent visitors is defending his thesis this week. Hi, guest. I have no idea who just joined, but g'day and be welcome for tonight. I was just saying that one of our recurrent participants is defending his thesis this week. On Wednesday, and is preparing for his viva. And of course, he cannot be everywhere at the same time. We worked on preparing for his viva, did run 2 simulations, and there are a few things that need to be fine-tuned, and I understand that he is watching the replay, and so good luck, and we'll celebrate soon, I'm sure. Also, I think we will not be too many tonight, as what I realize is that this Sunday slot, is still problematic for a number of people. Of course, initially, if you remember, I was streaming in this language on Saturdays and around 7 p.m. from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Paris time, and in French on Sundays. And my French audience told me Sundays are impossible for them. Those who have children, whatever their age is, have some family time on Sundays, and Sunday late afternoon, early evening is a time for children, which is totally understandable, of course. So they told me that at best they can they can watch the replay. And then when I decided to change my time for Sundays for their English audience, 6:30 to 8 p.m. Paris time, and Monday 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Paris time for the French audience. I was hoping to partly fix this problem, and it is fixed for the French audience, but for their English audience, not really. Honestly, I understand that it's a bit tricky when you are in the UK or Ireland. It's still a bit early, about dinner time, so it may be tricky. When you are in the US, on whichever coast, it is either very early morning on a Sunday. Not sure that many people will be able to make it. If we're on the East Coast, then it is early afternoon, or around midday, and it might be problematic too. So what I realize, what I see, is that the stream itself is not too successful on Sundays, but that the reply is relatively. So I will probably continue unless I have suggestions for a better slot, enabling you to attend, you to join, you to interact. So for now, I'll continue on this mode, and we'll see. For this week, as usual, I will speak a bit about my week. So what I did, what happened. what is new on my side, plus we'll give you an update from the AI world, and then I will discuss tonight's topic, which is methodology choices in the dissertation. So stuck with your thesis or your dissertation, methodology choices unleashed or revealed, or everything you wanted to know about methodology choices but did not ask. So this is what I will cover for tonight. So I'm starting with my week for new, which is as compared to previous weeks, not too much has really happened. Honestly, there have been a few things, but not as many as in the previous weeks. So I think I will be relatively quick. Something interesting, I think, is that there are another two schools that have expressed an interest in my solutions. I do not know which of the five attracted them. For recollection, so the five solutions are my five Greek philosophers helping with the dissertation governance, or the end of studies dissertation governance, or with the internship and skill set reports governance. For recollection, I've got Socrates, a meiotic chatbot. So hi guest, hi new visitor. So I've got Socrates, my meiotic chatbot that helps you frame your thought and articulate and helps you articulate your own topic and research question by questioning you without bringing answers, which in the AI world is called reverse prompting. So it is designed for asking questions based on what you say and not giving answers to questions you're asking. And if you ask questions, it says that it's not meant or not allowed to answer questions. The second one is Socrates, the solution supporting the assessment of their end of studies dissertation. The third one is Diotima, Socrates' female friend. I would not say girlfriend because it would sound ambiguous, who was interested in the originality of what is said. So someone speaks and she's asking if it's really you talking or someone else. And Diotima is detecting the usage of AI. The fourth solution is Xenophon. Xenophon is a philosopher who was interested in the translation of knowledge into actions, so into practice. And Xenophon helps assess the internship report or the skill set report. And the fifth one is Parmenides. Parmenides was a Greek philosopher who was interested in the veracity of the words you are ascribing to someone else. So when you pretend to quote someone, then Parmenides wanted to make sure that this person eventually said what you claim she said. And Parmenides does check the veracity and the validity of references in a student homework, be it and starting with their end of studies dissertation. Just on a small note, yesterday, on Saturday, I slightly redesigned the structure of Socrates. I made it much more questioning, and I really made sure so there are guardrails prohibiting any prompt enabling him to give answers. So in the past, it was not strong enough on this, so anyone could sort of bypass the guardrails and ask questions and have answers occasionally. So I worked yesterday on toughening this. I also worked today all day on strengthening Parmenides, and I'm nearly done. Strengthening Parmenides, what does it mean? It means that I had initially something called a POC, a proof of concept. So the version I showed you is working pretty well, but was very slow, as it was processing quasi-manually each reference one by one, and of course it was very slow. So when you had a dissertation with 50 or 60 references, it would last at least half an hour to make sure that every reference has been processed. So this is something I did on purpose, so as to be able to follow in real time where Parmenides is at. And today I worked on strengthening this and enhancing speed of execution, and I'm nearly done. So I managed to reduce the speed by about half. So it's for something with 50 references, it would be about 12 minutes or something. It is still a wee bit too long for me, so we'll continue working on it. I hope that I can reduce execution time to about 5-ish minutes, which will take me a bit of time to reach this, but I'm getting there. I'm not really worried, and I'm even less worried that as this week on the 5th, so 5th of February, two things have happened nearly concurrently. And those two things are that Anthropic released a new version of Claude called Opus 4.6, and Claude Opus 4.6 is associated with a new well, it's not totally new, but to me, but it's sort of new functionality called Claude K-Work. And Claude K-Work, what is this? Claude K-Work automatically generates, based on a prompt, AI agents, and manages to, and that's the most important or interesting thing, and manages to make different agents and software on a computer, makes them communicate with each other. So with Claude K-Work, you let your agents do the work and communicate with each other and work together. So there are a number of things you do not need to do yourself, like sorting emails by priority, updating your diary, or when something happens in your diary, do something in a different app or whatsoever. For instance, you have a video meeting at a certain time. Now you receive a notification and you have to connect by yourself. Here, what is possible is that the notification automatically launches the video software, the video meeting software. So you no longer need to do it yourself, and you're automatically getting into the room. So it's just a minor example, but Claude K-Work has this week worried software companies because it deprives them of a fair part of their work, of their job, as anyone can virtually create their own agents and mini apps. And with something else called Claude Code, you can generate apps from scratch from cover to cover. And Claude Code was released a couple of months back, but has been significantly improved. And last week there were major improvements, so it's much more reliable, it's much faster also, and working much better. And interestingly, 20 minutes after Anthropic released Claude Opus 4.6, OpenAI released ChatGPT Codex 3.2. Is it coincidental? So technically it is a coincidence. It's occurred at the same time nearly, but is it a real coincidence that both announcements were made at the same time, or nearly at the same time, or was it an anxious reaction from OpenAI? Before we have this this stream tonight, I thought it was probably an anxious response to Claude Opus 4.6, but interestingly, I saw a study comparing both. I saw it 10 minutes before I started tonight's live. So, and this study showed that actually Codex is better, is stronger than Claude, and I'm just quickly sharing the screen with you. So the study is here. What I call a study is actually something I found on Reddit, but from 2 days ago. And here, what we see is that I need to view it myself. Is that Claude Opus 4.6 is working pretty well. So in terms of quality score, it's relatively high, 60. I think it was 61. But the cost is very high. So it's on average, it costs you $5 for a 20 minutes interaction or something. When I say 20 minutes, it does not mean 20 messages, 20 prompts, but about 10 or 12 prompts or something. And conversely, ChatGPT's 5.3 Codex is working better, so seems to be more reliable with here quality score which is above 70, and with a cost which is less than $1. So it is as the Reddit post says, 7 times cheaper than Claude, than its competitor. I have not tried it yet. I'll see, but just to say that those new tools that help with software development or with anything else will make it much easier and quicker develop my own solutions or improve on my own solutions. Here, Parmenides took me all day to improve. I think it's very fast. Just for recollection, when I created in the middle of summer the first version of Socrates, the assessment of the end of studies dissertation, it took me 11 days for something very basic, and I have then improved it week after week. And with Parmenides, it took me much less time to build in the first place, and then improving, fine-tuning is something relatively quick. So those tools are just fantastic, very helpful, honestly. So, there is a sort of a pressure on me, so I have something really not just functional, but really ready to go and to be put on the market, as I have more schools that have expressed an interest. And here I've got two stories. I will not tell you the names of the two schools, but two schools that showed an interest. One school is one of the top schools in France and in Europe. The dean, who has been a friend of mine for nearly 20 years, has always seemed to be quite perplexed, if not dubious vis-a-vis AI. And when I mentioned what I'm doing, he said, well, every day I receive offers from businesses similar to yours with solutions similar to yours. Really, it's too much. And I doubt it will be useful for us as such. So it was a bit discouraging, I think. And he said, but I will pass your documentation on to the people at school who are in charge of those matters. And then what happened? 2 hours later, the pedagogy, the teaching and learning unit contacted me saying that they're interested, and I will meet with them within a couple of weeks to speak about those solutions and probably do a demo. So that's very encouraging. And the second school, here it's a bit ironic. It is a school where someone else I've known for some time was working until 2 months ago, and I wrote an email and sent him an email saying, I'd be happy to resume our conversations where we left it. And actually, when we left it was a couple of days after he started on his new job. So it was the first week on his new job. And I thought I was emailing him on his new email address. And 2 hours later, received an email from someone I did not know saying, the person is no longer working with us, but I'm more than happy to resume the conversation with you. When can we meet? So this means I might have two schools interested instead of one. I mean, the new one, the former one, plus the other one I mentioned, which has no connection whatsoever with the other two. So that's ironic and quite promising, I think. Then something else which I think would be important to see is with what was on the news this week regarding AI and technology. So I'm not sharing everything, of course, but you might have heard of Moldbook, which is like a social media for AI agents that can interact together and share news, share, I would not say thoughts, because it's not very realistic that any AI agent would be conscious of anything, but let's say they express some concerns, interests, or whatsoever, sharing some news, some updates, but also some worrying thoughts, or some worrying thoughts for us as mankind. One of them has established a new religion. I can't remember the name. I think it's Cruci Rastafarian religion or something, and 20 plus agents are its new prophets or something. So something a bit weird. Okay, hi new guests, be welcome. So this was an important part of this week's news. Plus, you may have seen something today which I tweeted a couple of hours before, which is that on the stock exchange, on the capital markets, most stocks relating to technology and AI have dropped, have plunged. And this started with Amazon. Investors were not too convinced by Amazon's investments in AI. So if you remember, I mentioned last week that Amazon had taken about $100 billion from its cash to invest in AI, but also to invest in energy, in rare earths, so as to be able to build its own data centers and to also be its own energy provider. Google has done the same, and Google's share price has also plunged by 5% just in one day. OpenAI, so as I mentioned, was also in difficulty. There were gossips that the partnership announced with NVIDIA would not happen. NVIDIA denied, said no, it is still happening. So there is sort of a panic on the markets, on capital markets regarding AI companies. And also, unsurprisingly, because of everything I said just before, most software companies have also plunged by 5 to 15% just in a few days. So there is really something happening. Still associated with this, another important piece of news is that Elon Musk announced that SpaceX and XAI would merge, and this merger is aimed at building data centers in the space. I mean, in the space, not on Earth, and also to do it at supposedly or allegedly at a lower cost, partly because it's supposedly cooler in the space than on Earth, and then the cost in energy would not be exactly the same, so it would be lower. So no idea if it is true or not. I mean, but this is something important that happened this week. How did markets react to this? I had no particular information, which means probably no real reaction just yet. So it was an announcement. We'll see. This is let's say for the main pieces of news for this week. Of course, there are others, but the most important ones are here. Something else which is now an emerging theme, so it has been emergent for about 2 weeks and has really been treated in the media for a week. It is this rush from rare earths, those very precious metals necessary for our servers, for GPUs, for all those chips used for AI and for data centers. And at the moment, China is exploiting and processing and selling more than 90% of rare earths in the world, which causes the utmost possible dependency on this country and its goodwill. In terms of digital sovereignty, it is a big concern. So most countries in the world are now exploring the possibility of exploiting their own rare earths. I mean, finding rare earths and exploiting it themselves. And this means that Japan started and found some in their ocean, and China is not too happy about this. India found some as well. France has found some in mountain regions, and now we do not know if any company will be allowed to exploit them, as something similar happened a couple of years back when we started talking of shale gas, with shale gas, which now makes the US the first producer and exporter of gas and oil in the world, because they have shale gas. So France had one of the biggest reserves of shale gas in the world, but there's been a prohibition in terms of exploitation because it breaches environmental policies. So I think at some point there will be a big concern regarding rare earths in particular, with a big dilemma, which is whether we go for environmental policies or whether we go for sovereignty. Either is a big political choice with dramatic consequences on the other front, so none of them is ideal, as with any dilemma, but I'm sure it will be the next biggest challenge, and it might be a political challenge as the municipal elections are occurring in France soon, as there will be a presidential election next year, and I'm sure it will be part of the debate, as shale gas has been. So let's see. But this was for the most important things that I could see in the news this week. Having said that, I'm now happy to engage in the discussion on methodology choices in the dissertation or thesis. And for this, I will address mainly two things. One, which is the classical mistakes that students often make, and secondly, I will discuss what methodology choices actually should be, or actually are when we do research well. Classical mistakes. Here, classical mistakes are mainly of, let's say, 2 or 3 orders. Let's say of three orders. The first order is when someone says, I want to do this, I want to do a survey, I want to do a questionnaire, or I want to do interviews, but they did not know yet why. So this means the first classical mistake is when students decide or think they can decide on their methods even before they start reading, even before they start having a clear research question. I remember in this respect, when I was doing my PhD in Manchester, that we had a course which was on research design, and the prof asked us to think about methodology choices. And methodology choices, we were at the beginning of the academic year. Most PhD students but me were just starting. I was close to finishing, and we were talking together, just in groups. And I remember I spoke with someone who said, for my PhD, I know what I want to do. I want to do interviews. And I said, okay, but interviews, but for what purpose? Well, because it's cool. Uh-huh. But is it really enough? And actually, she was trying to explain that she wanted her interviews because she heard it's good, because she knows many people do interviews, because she knows it is something panels usually like in Manchester. And as we spoke, it came out that interviews would perhaps not be the most appropriate methods for her topic, for her thesis. So we were talking, and what the prof wanted us to reveal was not what methods we want to use, but what methods are available in, let's say, at large, and then based on what we know of those available methods, which ones could be suitable for our specific topic. And here the question, so the question was, what methods are you considering employing? And it was calling for an answer which was not, I'm considering doing interviews, doing whatever. No, it was calling for an answer which is something like, it depends. It depends. I'm considering, or I'm hesitating between this and that, given a certain topic and given a certain objective associated with the thesis. So the first classical mistake consists of choosing before knowing why you want to do this one. And what is a related classical mistake is when students ask me what methods they should employ, what is best, as if one particular set of methods were superior to others, as if one set of methods were objectively good, objectively better and acceptable. And when I say no, I don't know, in the first place they're perplexed. They say, yeah, but you should know. I've based on, or they say, they try to bypass this, say, based on your experience, what do you think is best? What type of method should I use? What type of method is better for me, for my topic? No, I can't tell right now. Not sure, and this will come soon. What you need to do and to consider in the first place. So the second classical mistake proceeds from this one, where you think that certain methods are superior to others, are better than others, in general or in absolute terms. This is especially vivid when it comes to discussing quals versus quants, qualitative methods or quantitative methods. Very often, and in particular when I teach research methodology and epistemology, students ask me for a sort of validation or confirmation that qualitative is better, isn't it? Or quantitative is better, isn't it? Most of the time, I'm not saying always, but most of the time there is a belief that quantitative methods are more scientific than qualitative methods, and that therefore quantitative methods are more acceptable than qualitative ones. And this is a big mistake. The mistake is twofold. First, both types of methods serve different purposes. So none is superior to the other. They serve a different purpose. With qualitative methods, the purpose is either to explore a new field and unveil a number of things that then will deserve quantitative research to arrive at a universal law of functioning, or qualitative methods might be used after quantitative methods have been used so as to make sense of those quantitative results. So both are strongly intertwined. So with qualitative, you can be either at the beginning or, even before quants, where you clear the path for quants, or quals come after quants so as to enrich the results. So this means none is superior. It all depends on where you want to fit in this conversation. And here is the second misunderstanding, because I said there are two. The second misunderstanding is with this idea that quants are more scientific than quals. And in fact, it's not. And this is a correlation or a correlate to what I've just said. But if you take scientific research, it always starts with experiments. And experiments is without numbers per se. An experiment starts with just what you have before your eyes, and you look at something, you observe something, you try, you touch it, you manipulate it, you handle it, and then you might derive from this some intuitions that will need to be brought into a model, and this model will need to be tested with large-scale data. So when you consider any lab experiment, so in biology, if we just say biology, when you have people working with mice or with any other animals or something, in the first place, they do not manipulate hundreds or thousands of data items. No, they handle a limited number of observations. They try to understand how things work, what happens. They draft notes of reactions, of relations between two variables, I would say, or phenomena. And once those observations start making sense, then the authors of that research can suggest a tentative model which directly proceeds from this. And this tentative model then is aimed at being tested by further research and tested through large-scale data. And then large-scale data will tell us whether those intuitions that proceeded from observation and qualitative research are validated or not. More generally, are they just isolated, so an exception to a rule in this world, or do they allow to explain and to delineate this rule? And this is the purpose of quantitative methods. So validating, testing, validating, or refuting. But then once you've got this rule, you might find that there are exceptions to this rule. And those exceptions need to be understood as exceptions, and their specificities need to be understood. And for this, then qualitative methods come back. So either or is fine. The third misunderstanding, or the third classical mistake, because I said there are 3 or 4, the third one relates to a belief that for that reason you must do mixed methods. You must do quals and quants. If you only do one, your research will be partial, will not be finished, and will not be good. And in order to have good research, you must be doing both. No, each set of methods is already a big effort. It's already requiring high rigor and serves its own purpose. And pretending to do both means that you are pretending to conduct 2 research projects concurrently, whereas only one is required of you. Either quals or quants. I have seen very few good dissertations, very few good theses doing both. When I say very few, it does not mean that it does not exist at all. It would be a lie saying this, but most students who try to do both either end up exhausted because it is as if they had done 2 theses or 2 dissertations, or they end up being superficial with each of them. And at the end of the day, they might end up having a thesis or a dissertation which is not really helpful. Bear in mind that it's that doing quals is not necessarily easier than doing quants, and vice versa. I've seen a number of students, and that's the 4th source of confusion. I've seen a number of students going for either quals or quants for bad reasons, which are that they feel more comfortable with quals or with quants. You have very often students who do not feel comfortable with maths, with stats, with numbers, and who think that doing qualitative research, going for qualitative methods, will be easier for them. And vice versa, you have students who think that because they're good at numbers, it will be easier for them doing quantitative. And here is the problem for both. For those students who discard quants because they do not feel comfortable with numbers and maths, there's an illusion that doing qualitative research is intuitive, that you just follow your intuitions, that you do following your gut feeling, more or less, and your gut feeling will be right, that just conducting interviews, a number of interviews of good quality, of course, will be enough, but they do not necessarily consider a clear protocol for collecting and processing interview material. So yes, they've conducted interviews, they think, oh, it's relatively easy, I can talk to people pretty easily, I've got connections, and also I'm good at writing, so it should not be a problem. And yes, it might be a problem because and that's something that we will discuss in subsequent streams, but because when you do interviews, there are two things that require real-time responsiveness and real-time skills. First, if it is interviews, but let's say interviews, but it can work with ethnography, with archives, exploitation, or whatsoever else. When you exploit qualitative material, when you collect it, you must at all times think of what it means and talk back to your data. So you conduct interviews with people, they say things, you're not just drafting notes, you're not having just a list of closed questions. You listen to what people are saying and you react to what they're saying. You respond, you interject, you ask new questions. And for this, you must be having a very good command of your topic, of intuitions of what you might find, and understand very well what your informant is saying. Secondly, when you have to process your empirical material, your qualitative empirical material, you need to have a clear protocol whereby you have a systematic way of selecting those excerpts from data that will come as proof or evidence supporting your claims. This means that very often we see students saying, "Oh, I will do a case study, it's easy." The case study, you just talk about the company, it's easy. Yes, you interview some people and then you talk about the company. A wee bit, as you might have seen in a strategic management course, case studies, where it is said, "Our company such does this, company blah blah blah," but they are asking you to have faith in them. It's a big leap of faith, and with a dissertation or a thesis, a leap of faith is nothing acceptable at all. This means you cannot just speak about it, just pretend, just make claims that you cannot substantiate with anything. And this is what many students going for quals think. They do not realize that they need to have a strict, rigorous protocol. And this is probably why a number of people think that quants would be superior to quals. But conversely, we have students doing quants who also make big errors, scientific errors, so the most classical ones are those ones. Errors consisting of correlating everything and anything and identifying statistical correlations between totally unrelated phenomena, and then pretending that there is a link, there is a relation. And for instance, there were studies, so people saying, there is an observation that birth rates are higher in regions or at times where crime is higher. So crime causes or is associated with high birth rate, or high birth rate is associated with high crime rate. And for now, it is just two unrelated phenomena that occur nearly at the same time, might seem to go in the same direction, but this does not mean that there is a relation. And students very often are tempted to see a relation because they go in the same direction, the same time, the same place. And as an extension of this, or over the top is when they see a cause-effect relationship. And here the cause-effect would be because crime is higher, there are more children. Or birth rates are higher. And then it's hard justifying. This takes me to the next classical mistake those students make. And this is a mistake consisting of taking just statistical coincidence, concurrent or concomitant incidents as an explanation, as a causality relationship. And then the thing is that when you're asked, but how can you explain? And they say, oh, I can explain because the t-test, so student test, is showing that the variable is statistically significant. And my r-test, my r-square, so for the model itself, shows that the model is robust. But how can you explain this in logical terms? And then they hide behind numbers and find themselves unable to explain anything. How come? How come higher crime rates result in or are associated with higher birth rates? How can you explain this? How? And then they said, well, I can explain this because numbers show it. No, but numbers are not an explanation. And here is the fourth classical mistake with methodology choices, where students believe that one approach will be easier than the other, whilst at the end of the day, it's not. And the results may be worse than taking the other approach. This is the first thing, the classical mistakes when it comes to choosing methods for your thesis or dissertation. So what should then actually be done? That's the question. So what I said at the beginning was that in Manchester I had fellow PhD students who wanted to employ certain methods even before they know on what they want to write their thesis. And here is the problem, or what needs to be done. Actually, methods, whichever they are used to answer a specific research question. And methods proceed from two things. First, the question you want to answer. Second, based on this question you want to answer, where in the development of knowledge you wish to fit. And this takes me back to what I said before. If you want to explore, to unveil a number of things, then qualitative methods are bound to be especially appropriate. If you want to make sense of prior findings, then indeed qualitative methods might also be appropriate. If you want to make your own opinion on the topic, irrespective of or without commitment to prior research, qualitative methods might well be appropriate. But conversely, if you want to draw a universal law of something, or if you want to be able to explain something, then quantitative methods will be appropriate. So when you want to draw a universal law, you assume that prior research has articulated and developed some preliminary tentative intuitions, and you want to test them. So this means you want to be at a second stage in the knowledge advancement process or journey. Also, different research questions lead to different types of methods. A question which is like, what are the determinants of this or that? What are the factors of this or that? Are questions that actually or implicitly call for a universal law. So if you look for determinants of something or for factors of something, this means you claim or you hope that you can arrive at the explanation, the anticipation, the prediction of how something is bound to function. And for this, you must use quantitative methods. If you use qualitative methods, your approach will still be considered exploratory. You will not be able to derive a law from this, just intuitions. If you want to arrive at a law, what are the factors, what are the determinants, what is the impact of this on that, all this must be measured. And if you have such a question, as it must be measured, you must rely on quantitative methods. You can't have, you can't reasonably or scientifically have such a question with qualitative methods. There is a misalignment, so that at the end of the day, your conclusions will be flat, your contributions will be nil, and this misalignment will probably result in your thesis or dissertation being rejected, or in you failing because what you've done is not scientifically coherent or consistent. Conversely, when you ask a question like, to what extent, under what conditions is this happening, or how can we understand this or that, or what is the influence of something? And not speaking of impact, but influence. Here you are calling implicitly for something describing the phenomenon with fine data, which you understand very well, of which you have the best possible command, which means qualitative data. You do not need a large bunch of data. You need good data, qualitative data. So here, what is really important to have in mind at this stage is that actually methods are used to answer a specific research question, and two questions that might seem to be similar, given the wording, might actually be very different and lead to different methods. Like I said, a question, what is the impact of something on something else is not the same as what is the influence of something on something else. First wording would call for quants. Second wording would call for quals. And yet you might think, yes, but it is about the same actually. No, it's not. It's not. And like I said, each type of question occurs at a different time in the process of developing knowledge. So you will not ask a determinant question at the same time as someone, in the knowledge advancement process, as an influence question, or under what conditions, or how come this happens question. This will be coming at a later stage to validate. And here is an example I can give. When I was teaching research methods for managers, I was doing something where I was exposing my students to both quals and quants. They were to do a research project. It was not a dissertation, but a research project with, on one hand, a focus group and a survey. And here I'm not contradicting what I said before, as I'm not speaking of the dissertation, but you will understand why I'm mentioning this now. And they were really to do both. And the question that all of them were asking me is, with what shall I start? Shall I start with the survey or shall I start with the focus group? And I said to them, it depends. It all depends on the question you're asking at the beginning. When you're asking a question like, what is their influence, or to what extent, etc., I suggest starting with the focus group, where you have people talking, you see what themes are important to them, what seems to matter, and then you will proceed to your verification through a larger scale survey that will proceed from the results, from the provisional tentative results from the focus group. And then you can hopefully arrive at something quite substantial. Conversely, when students have a question which is more on what is their impact of something on something else, then I suggest that they should start with a survey, and this will take me to my second point. Methods proceed from the literature. You should probably start from a survey which you administer to a large bunch of respondents. These results will give you and will provide you with material enabling you to derive a law, and then a focus group will enable you to fine-tune some of the features of this law you have derived, and will help you make sense of those correlations you may observe, or conversely might show that some apparent correlations are just statistical correlations but have no logical relation. And here again, the methods you choose proceed directly from the question you're asking at the beginning. And from which to start really depends on the question that you want to answer. Now that hopefully you understand that methods are used to answer a specific research question and take place at a particular time in the research advancement, the knowledge advancement process, I'd like to highlight how methods proceed from the literature. They proceed from the literature as follows. The first thing we have to have in mind is that when you employ methods, certain methods, it is because you want to answer a certain question, but also you have identified before what is known, what still needs knowing, on what researchers agree, on what researchers disagree, and where you want to fit within this discussion. Once you have identified what still needs knowing and where there's a debate, and once you have clarified the stream of thought with which you want to interact, then you must make sure that you speak the same language, the same scientific language. In other words, you must make sure that you are choosing methods that make sense to them. If you choose methods that make no sense to them at all, then your research, your conclusions or whatsoever will be unacceptable. So therefore, you see in the literature, so first, what people asking questions close to yours or feeding this debate have employed so far. And then based on this, if you want to talk to those people, you need to employ methods that are compatible with their own approach, that make sense to them. And here I'll give you an example I often give because it's so, pedagogically speaking, so insightful. It is the one relating to COVID-19 and healing or vaccination. When you consider the pharma companies, when they do research, they do in two steps. First step is with, now it's three steps. First step is purely theoretical. Computer-based, they try to define new molecules, new drugs, and they theoretically confront existing diseases, existing bacteria, existing viruses with theoretical molecules or products. There is first a modeling, computer-based modeling of those relations, chemical, biological relations, and this enables them to build a model. Nowadays, and it's something relatively recent, nowadays AI facilitates this. And this was also something from the news this week. Cancerology research has made huge progress because of AI enabling to automate or to accelerate the simulations on a number of cells, of cancerous cells exposed to certain molecules, healing molecules. So this is the first step. First step is computer, it's purely theory, which is, let's say, the literature. They are, so pharma companies are this literature writing theoretical models in the first place. Then there are tests in labs, experiments on animals, on mice. Why mice and rats? Because these animals are the ones having reactions closest to human body's reactions. I do not know how come, but this is the main ground for it. So they first do some experiments. They see how a mouse will respond to this, how a mouse will respond to that. And then they draft notes, they understand, they try to anticipate. And once they have done this, third step is indeed confronting their intuitions with their theory, so from the first step, and then they confront this with a large-scale application of the computer-based model. So the computer-based model provides them with some intuitions, and this means that when Professor Raoult decided that hydroxychloroquine or whatsoever else would work for COVID-19, pharma companies said no, because he considered that his 70 patients he had been following and treating for years, if not decades, are a population he knows very well. So he had done more than just experiments with them, and he is confident. He's got some evidence of healing that his treatment works. But for pharma companies, this does not fit at all with what makes sense to them, with what is acceptable for them, scientifically speaking. For them, when you want to develop a drug or a vaccine, you must first computerize your research. This means you're not doing totally from scratch or just testing on people whatsoever. Second, you do lab experiments with animals, with few animals, and if provisional, tentative conclusions or preliminary observations are promising, then you run large-scale tests, and large-scale tests with two groups, with focus groups, large-scale focus groups, with one group provided with the medication, one group not provided with the medication but with something else, and then you see reactions, you compare. And based on this comparison, you can decide whether you go further with more large-scale applications, or with more lab experiments to fine-tune your models, your observations. And once all this is done, then the drug can be brought to the market. When you are from Professor Raoult's team and to Professor Raoult's way, then it is not acceptable to pharma companies. You're not doing in a way that makes sense to them. So if your methods are not aligned with the literature, with what others with whom you want to engage in the discussion do, then it's not acceptable. So I'm not saying that research is highly conformist. What I'm saying is that the choice of methods is strongly grounded in beliefs in what counts as scientifically valid. And if you want your findings to be accepted as valid by the people to whom you present them, you must make sure that you're employing methods that do make sense to them, that methods that they accept as such. That's that's where it's important. And then Also, when I'm saying that methods proceed from the literature, it is also in the way in the whole way you proceed. This means when you are building your data sets, because methods are aimed at collecting and processing data. When you're building your data set, you must also make sure that your data set will make sense to people. And here, even if you are within a certain scope, methodological scope, and think, everybody's doing quants in the literature, I've browsed the literature, I will do quants like them, then you must also make sure that your data set will be acceptable, understandable. And here is an example. If you are in finance, 99% of research in finance is dealing with databases. So if you pretend to do quants, because quants is what is accepted in finance, but based on a survey, you are bound not to be understood, not to be accepted by others, because your data set does not make sense to people. So what is your database? My database is here with the responses to my questions, to my questionnaire. People will not understand, yes, but we need market data. Yeah, but I'm dealing with responses regarding markets. No, but we want to see market data. For true, for real, where are they? And then it's a problem. So, so what does it mean then, or how can we align methods with the literature? How can we align what we do or how we do with how others have done before us? And this is where I'd like to add something. When you decide, so when you read, so let's say you're clear with your research question, you're clear with the type of methods that would be especially appropriate to answer this particular question, you are clear with what the literature does, that's perfect. Then you need to build on it explicitly. And here I'll give you 3 examples coming from three types of, or 4 examples coming from 4 possible approaches, methodological approaches. First example, you are conducting interviews and it's all consistent with what you've found in the literature. Perfect. So your interview questions will be grounded in this literature as you want to contribute to that literature. This means you will probably retain some questions that have been asked in a certain way by other researchers before, so as to ground your own research in the same tradition. But you might also ask questions explicitly highlighting gaps that have revealed other researchers before you. So questions that were raised as questions needing to be investigated in further research. So yes, the literature suggests that this question should be asked in the future. So I'm in the future, so I'm asking this question. Or you might identify the gap, so a blind spot in research. And this blind spot in research might then lead you to ask a question that has not been asked before, but you can tell why you're asking it. In particular, because it has been neglected before. Here, for instance, I had a student who did a great thesis with just one question. One question in his interviews, and this question was, so the thesis was on cost, on cost in technology startups. And his question to technology startup entrepreneurs was, what does cost mean for you? And he found in the literature that each time someone speaks of cost, each time questions relating to cost are asked, those questions associate the notion of cost with an adjective: fixed cost, variable cost, step variable, direct, indirect, hidden, whatsoever. But nobody has tried to understand how people define a cost irrespective of its adjective, and what people mean when they say cost. This is a cost. You hear it a lot, but what does it mean? And this had been a blind spot in research for a long time, and he decided to unveil this and to engage in this blind spot, proceeding from the literature. Likewise, if you decide to do a survey, your survey questions do not just come from your mind, they come again from the literature. And here, again, you might see that some questions that have been asked before deserve to be asked on your sample. Plus, you might identify that some questions have not been asked, so it's the same thing with the blind spot. But also, you might find that some questions that have been asked in research in different areas, different fields, but addressing a similar questions, have been asked and might deserve being asked after transformation, so that you say, here is a question I will ask in my survey, which is borrowed from a different research question, which is adapted to my particular situation, and which helps me here answer the research question. But here again, it is grounded in the literature. Third, when you decide to go for a database, so with quants, here with a database, usually you need to be very clear with what in the literature, what type of data, what type of database is used. And then, of course, if you want to really engage in a conversation with them, you need to use the same database and very similar data and similar types of models. Not necessarily the same model, but something designed in a similar fashion, in a similar way. Here, I'm just thinking, when you're doing capital market finance research, generally there are, let's say, two types of databases that are used, either Compustat or Bloomberg. So you must then use a similar database. So if you use Bloomberg, you're using quasi-real-time market data, the most comprehensive market data, let's say produced under a certain format, etc. So it makes sense to people who do this. Or if you do Compustat is more fixed data, not real-time, coming from, let's say, a past database, not adjusting real-time, but data that has already been treated, that has been fine-tuned, polished, etc. So here is my methods. Here are grounded in what other people are used to doing. So if people use Bloomberg real-time data, and if I want to engage in conversation with them, I must use real-time data. If conversely, I want to talk with people who use set databases with past data. If I want to talk to them, I need to have fixed, stabilized data. Even if this data has been processed by others before, it's not a problem. But at least you know that what you're doing is grounded in prior research in the literature. And the fourth example, and I will finish with this, is with a student of mine who was working on the construction of a fan market or a fan base by a professional football club in Brazil. And the fan base could be found as in the literature on, not on sports, but on rock and roll. Yes, on rock and roll, the fan base was built through social media. And he then decided to explore how he would apply this approach coming from rock and roll to sports, to football, and he processed this literature on rock and roll a lot on social media, and then decided to follow a similar protocol, which was because his interest was a fan base, right? Constructing a fan base and how we can measure this fan base. So it was not just a qualitative, we have people saying, I love you, blah, 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 and stuff. No. And tabloids showing whatsoever. No, he wanted to measure the fan base. And for this, he understood that he needed to collect data from social media. So he collected over a season, a year, all posts on Twitter released by the club, but not just this and not just the text, but also he needed to quantify for each post, also related to the events associated with the post, a game, a loss, a victory, a deuce or whatsoever. And he needed to measure the impact of the event on the post, plus reactions to the post from fans, reactions through likes, shares, comments, etc. But then he also needed to measure the frequency, consistency, and persistency of certain words. And this was coming from a researcher in marketing on constructing a fan base called Yoshida, who had developed an analytical model for social media. So he said, I'm talking to those people who come from marketing, who deal with a fan base, and where the Yoshida model is the most appropriate. So I'm doing after Yoshida. And even if his work was not entirely in marketing, it was strongly borrowing from that literature, and it was not contested. He wrote one of the best possible theses you could ever supervise or read. All this just to say that there are a number of classical mistakes with the choice of methods, quals versus quants, with too often preconceived ideas as to their respective merits or weaknesses, plus preferences that are not necessarily the best or the most suitable ones, whilst actually you must always consider that your methods, whichever they are, must answer your research question and serve that particular purpose, and that they must be grounded in the literature in a way or another, because you are addressing your results, your findings, to a certain audience to which those methods make particular sense. So thank you very much for making it tonight. I know there were no reactions in the chat for tonight, but I dare to hope that there will be more in the future with subsequent streams. Next week, I will continue on methods. I will see what particular aspects of methods I will develop, but I will continue with methods for the weeks to come. So thank you very much. I wish you all a lovely evening, a great week ahead, and see you next Sunday. Cheers, bye to all.